everyone, it's Sarah, Painter Creator here. Well, I've just been excited because I got a new set of tubes to refill my usual Cotman watercolour set, and I bought myself two special little tiny tubes of paint. They are Hordem Aquarels from Schminkel, and they are super granulating. So I thought we could have a look at what we can paint with these together. Super granulating just means that it settles out into different colours. So this one is forest brown, and this one is forest olive. So I've got my little palette here. I'm just going to squeeze a little bit in. So that's the olive. And this is the brown. I'm just going to get my little mop brush, and we're going to do a little bit of a swatch. Let me just turn my board over for this, so I don't get any paint on. So I'm going to just have a swatch. So some clean water, my little mop brush. So this was the olive by itself. It's quite a nice foresty colour. Wash my brush. And this was the brown. It's quite green. So I'm going to have a go and see what it's like if I mix it with some cerulean blue. So a little bit of cerulean blue and that olive. Cerulean blue, I love cerulean blue. It's quite delicate. Let's see what happens. Maybe a bit more in that mix. That's quite similar to that, isn't it? Let's go for a little bit of cerulean blue and the other one. I thought this brown would be more brown. So let's have a look. So you can see that's separated a little bit. It's not as heavy separation as I thought it would be, but they're quite nice. And then mixed in, quite like that one. That's got a nice sea tone as well with it. I do love swatching like this. So now we've done the swatching, I'm going to apply the painting and then I will get back to you. Okie dokie, so I've pulled out, so I've got my two new ones, my forest olive, a forest brown. Let me just pop those. I've also put some of my trusty dusk yellow, which is a Van Gogh watercolour, another super granulating colour. I've pulled this one out because it's dusk green, but it's a bit of a bright green, but it might make a dark colour. So I've got that out just in case. And for a bit of light, I've got my Jaune Brilliant Dark. That sounds a bit daft, doesn't it? Light for a dark, but it's a useful colour. So I'm going to do a bit of an experimenty foresty scene, which will be lovely. So I'm going to start off by giving my paper a big spritz, getting my big mop brush, and I'm going to drop in some of this Jaune Brilliant in the middle for some light in the forest. I'm going to probably end up tilting and prepping, so that's fine. But I just want a little bit of light. You could use any nice sort of light colour, any yellow would work. I just like the opaqueness of the Jaune Brilliant. So I'm going to start off with this nice dusk olive. And I'm just going to drop it in. So I will be using some of my other Cotton normal set watercolours, but I just thought it would be fun to try something new. So this is going to be a forest scene, loads of sort of tree canopies. I'm just going to drop in some of that darker, what was it called, brown base. Let's see what happens. I need to give it a spritz, keep it nice and wet. And then this dusk yellow, it looks really dark, but actually it comes quite to its own and lightens up nicely on the page. I want to keep that light as much as possible in the middle. As you can see, it granulates out with this beautiful yellow bloom, does that dusk yellow. So I'm going to just give that a little bit of a spritz with my big spritzer bottle. And I'm just going to do some tilting and playing and moving it around just to soften down some of these edges and get a backdrop that I really would like to work from. Just going to soften some of these. So I don't want to send you dizzy. But it's just the beginning of a bit of an intuitive paint. So this is just that dusk yellow that I'm dropping in, just to put a little bit of a form into this sort of soft background of the forest floor. That's just water, and I'm just going to tilt, get that idea of sort of a canopy of trees coming. going to soften this part here. I don't want those sort of hard edges on the edge. Make it nice and soft. I'm just going to drop in a few little bits here. And I'm going to just let that soak into the paper, and I'm going to replenish my palette, and I've lifted my board so it's nearly flat. It's just on about 2-3 degrees angles, so I'm just adding a little bit more paint into my wells. Whilst that's settling, it's so much fun just playing with colour. So I'm going to do a green painting, well, mainly green painting today. So I've just squeezed a few more bits out. I'm just waiting for this to settle, grabbing a drink. I don't want it dry because I do want some of those lost and found edges, but I do want it to be a little bit more settled than it is. Into this Chambrilian leftover space, I'm just dropping a little bit of burnt umber, and I'm going to put a lot of water in there with it. I think these porcelain palettes are really useful for you to see how much water we've got, and then I'm just going to tap it onto my paper towel just to help me control the water, and I'm going to start dropping in some distant tree trunks. Swapping onto my little number 4 brush. The mop brush was holding too much water, getting a lot of bleed back on that. And these will just go into the background of the forest. Because watercolour dries a lot lighter on the page. Let me just mop that up a little bit. We're dropping in, I think whilst it's damp, I'm just going to drop in a little bit of water into the forest. I can feel a calling for a little bit of water, so that's just some cerulean blue. I'm just going to drop in, so it's still damp. So that's just under that halfway, that magic halfway line. I'm just going to drop in a little bit of this forest brown into there, because when we did our little check, it made a really nice sort of watery colour, and it will just blend it in on the paper, and I like that when it works with me. There we go, we've got a nice little sort of forest space there. I'm just going to drop in using this olivey green, olivey brown, olivey forest olive, or whatever it's called. I'm just going to drop in some bushes. So we're still very wet. So just going to be soft foliage on this side. Using those two new colours. Soften those off a little bit. Go into the background, and then I'm just going to drop in a little bit of this dusk yellow. As if the light's just catching some of those, and you'll see the yellow come from that. That's nice. We've got a nice sort of pond area coming there. So I'm going to mix that cerulean blue and a little bit of this brown together. Make a little bit more of a distant trees, just a slightly different colour. Remember, you don't have to worry too much about them. They're not the star of the show, they're just the supporting act. But it's the bit that just gives a little bit of depth and dimension to your painting. If you're struggling with this, just go on to a rigger brush or any smaller brush. I'm just going to add a little bit of this brown into there. Tones up. Okay, we're building. And it's this gradual building up of intuitively of where you think you might see a tree. And just letting it settle, but working with it gradually over the time. So I'm going back to my little number 4 round. going to just drop a touch of ultramarine into that mix now, and that will start to darken the browns. So that's just burnt umber and ultramarine, plenty of water. So we're looking for a little bit of a darker make that a little bit of a thicker. The key now is to not fuss too much. Just keep painting upwards. Trees mainly go up, so just nice, gentle. And as I said, if you are worried, just get yourself your rigger brush. So I've not tried this at all, I'm just letting it come together as it wants. So I've swapped onto my little mop brush now because I want some sort of more defined tree trunks, and I find my mop brush does a good job with that. I'm going to darken that a little bit. Burnt umber and a little bit of ultramarine. I'm starting to just build the tonal value. And then a little bit more detail of some of these trees that are coming into the story of our forest. So if we get our rigger brush, roll it around so you've got plenty in there. You can then go and just put some thinner twigs in. So this forest is just out of my imagination. It is what it is. So I'm just gently working through, getting ever so slightly darker. mixing that touch more ultramarine into the mix. Oops, sorry, the window cleaner's here. Not made me jump. I need a thicker mix. And just water, and I can now start softening those into environment. A little bit of water on here. So I'm going to just use some of this dark, and I'm going to do some smaller sort of twiggy bits on some of these trees. So I'm starting to build the information up in a bit more detail in some of these trees, and getting that sort of sense of other foliage around. So I'm now going to have to mix a much darker brown. So I'm going to stick with this brown, but I'm also going to add some of this granulating greeny colour into the mix, the forest brown, and I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine blue, maybe a little bit more, of this forest brown. So I've got two sort of darker sets of trees, so I need to put in a darker tree, and I always have to sort of grab my big brave girl bit at this point, because it's scary. Doing the darks, but it's important. And hopefully you can see how you can use your brushes to just help build your trees up so that they're a bit more lifelike. Right, it's not an uber realistic impression of a forest, but it's got that sort of sense of belonging. So I'm just picking up some to start just grounding that tree, and I'm just going to now wash clean water into so I'm just adding a little bit of that nice bright dusk yellow into here. So this is just into the water. I'll soften that away. So I'm just building a little bit of texture across the foreground. Oh, that bit there. Whoops. I'm just going to use my rigger brush just to pull up some grasses out of that foreground that we've just done.